This wasn't just another trophy, another paycheck, or another great week on the tennis calendar. What Alex Eala just pulled off in Washington was the kind of breakthrough that can change the direction of an entire sport back home. At only 21 years old, the Filipina star captured the first WTA 500 singles championship of her career, becoming the first Filipino player to accomplish that feat and delivering a historic moment for Philippine tennis. The 252,000 winners check is easily the biggest payday of her career, but even that number doesn't come close to explaining what this victory means. For a country of more than 127 million people, this was about finally watching one of its own stand at the top of a major professional tennis tournament. Eala didn't simply survive a difficult draw in Washington. She went straight through some of the biggest names in women's tennis, and by the end of the week, the conversation around her had completely changed. Nobody was asking anymore whether Alex Eala belonged against elite competition. The bigger question became impossible to ignore: are we watching the beginning of a whole new era? Because if this week was any indication, Alex Eala isn't waiting around to become the future of the WTA. She may already be arriving. Her road to the title was absolutely brutal. Tennis fans love a Cinderella run, but very few champions have to go through a lineup like this. Eala defeated an Olympic gold medalist, knocked out the defending champion, beat a top 10 player, dismantled a 4-time Grand Slam champion, and then finished the job against the world numero 3 in the championship match. Each round was supposed to be the one where the dream ended. Instead, every new opponent seemed to bring out an even better version of her. Rankings didn't scare her. Big names didn't slow her down. Reputation didn't matter once the ball was in play. She wasn't hanging around hoping her opponents would have a bad day. She was taking matches away from them with aggressive, composed, fearless tennis. By the time the final arrived at the William H. Fitzgerald Tennis Center inside Rock Creek Park Tennis Center, Washington was buzzing. Every ticket had been sold, and nearly 7,000 fans packed into the venue for a championship matchup that had become one of the biggest stories of the tournament. Flags were waving, cameras were everywhere, and the atmosphere had that unmistakable big match feel hours before the first serve. On one side stood Alex Eala, the 21-year-old sensation from Quezon City who had captured the imagination of Filipino fans around the world. On the other side was Jessica Pegula, the tournament's top seed, the world numero 3, a former US Open finalist, an 11-time WTA singles champion, and one of the most consistent competitors on tour. Pegula knew this stage well. She had already won Washington back in 2019, and she had spent years dealing with pressure at the highest level of the sport. On paper, the American had every reason to be considered the favorite. But as Eala had shown all week, matches aren't won on paper. The final also came with some unfinished business. Eala and Pegula had previously met in the Miami Open semifinals, where Pegula escaped with a hard-fought 3-set victory. Eala lost that match, but the performance helped introduce her to a much larger global tennis audience and convinced plenty of observers that the Philippines had a serious future star on its hands. Now, 18 months later, they were meeting again, only this time the stakes were even higher. No semi-final consolation. No next round. One woman would walk away with the trophy. Pegula entered the match looking exactly like the experienced champion everyone expected. Her game is built around clean ball striking, intelligent patterns, consistency, and the ability to make opponents play one extra ball again and again. She knew when to attack and when not to force the issue. Her body language suggested she believed experience would eventually make the difference. But Eala had spent the entire tournament showing just how much she had grown. Before the final, she talked about becoming physically stronger, mentally tougher, and technically more complete. She believed her movement had improved, her forehand had become more dangerous, and her serve was developing into a much more dependable weapon. Those weren't just confident comments at a press conference. Her results had already backed them up. She opened her Washington campaign by defeating Olympic gold medalist Sin Queen Bin in a thrilling battle. Then came defending champion Leylah Fernandez, and even after falling into serious trouble during the second set, Eala fought her way back and eliminated the reigning champion. Next up was world número 10 Elina Svitolina, and Eala took care of that challenge in straight sets with aggressive tennis and zero fear. Then came Naomi Osaka, a four-time Grand Slam champion and former world número 1. If anyone thought that was where Eala's run would finally hit a wall, she had another answer. Eala outplayed Osaka 6-4, 6-2 pulgadas only 76 minutos, producing what was, at that point, arguably the biggest victory of her career. Suddenly, she wasn't the young underdog enjoying a fun week anymore. She was the player everybody else had to worry about. Pegula reached the final after defeating Diana Schneider 7-5, 6-4 pulgadas, a tough semifinal, another example of the patience and consistency that had carried her through so many big matches. But even Pegula recognized what was happening with Eala. Before the championship match, she openly praised her opponent, saying it would be a battle and describing herself as a big fan of Alex. Pegula called Eala the future of the tour before adding something even more telling, "She's already here." Once the match began, those words looked almost prophetic. Eala showed virtually no signs of nerves. She didn't look like a 21-year-old playing the biggest final of her career. She looked comfortable, locked in, and ready to take control. Her ground strokes had purpose behind them. Her returns came back deep. Her footwork stayed sharp, and she repeatedly forced Pegula into defensive positions. Instead of waiting for the world número 3 to dictate the action, Eala set the tone herself. The first service break came early, and it felt like more than just a change on the scoreboard. It was a message that Eala wasn't there simply to enjoy the occasion. She was there to win the whole thing. Whenever Pegula tried to build momentum, Eala found another deep return, another clean winner, or another well-constructed rally. Most impressive was her decision-making. She stayed aggressive without becoming reckless. She attacked when the opening was there, but she didn't hand Pegula cheap points with unnecessary errors. As the match went deeper, what had looked like an incredible hot streak throughout the week began to look like something much more serious. This was championship-level tennis against one of the best players in the world. Then came the moment every player spends years imagining, championship point. For a few seconds, the stadium seemed to hold its breath. One final exchange, one final shot, and then it was over. Pegula's last ball missed the court, and the entire place erupted. Fans jumped to their feet as the noise poured through the William H. Fitzgerald Tennis Center. Eala stood there for a moment, almost frozen, as the reality of what she had done finally began to register. The scoreboard read 6-3, 6-4. Strat sets. Alex Eala had just beaten the world número 3 to win the biggest championship of her professional career. With that final point, she officially became the first Filipino player to win a WTA 500 singles title. And look at the road she took to get there: Olympic gold medalist Sin Quinbin, defending champion Leylah Fernandez, world número 10 Elina Svitolina, four-time major champion Naomi Osaka, and finally top-seeded Jessica Pegula. That is the kind of championship run people remember. Along with the trophy, Eala collected 500 WTA ranking points and 252,000 pulgadas prize money, the largest single payday of her career. Those ranking points were expected to send her to another career high and put her in position to challenge for a place inside the world's top 20. Not long before this, even cracking the top 30 looked like a huge milestone. Now the expectations have changed completely. But the biggest reward wasn't financial, and it wasn't a ranking number. This victory meant something much deeper for Filipino fans. Millions had followed her journey, with supporters staying awake late into the night to watch her compete. When championship point arrived, Eala wasn't just carrying her own dream anymore. She represented young athletes across the Philippines who had grown up wondering whether someone from their country could someday reach this level. Then, as she lifted the trophy, the emotions finally came through. She smiled, tears filled her eyes, and you could almost see the entire journey hitting her at once: the young girl from Quezon City who picked up a racket, trained for endless hours, showed up in colorful socks and light-up shoes, endured difficult defeats, learned from every setback, and kept believing she could someday compete with the very best. Every early practice, every sacrifice, and every painful lesson had led to Washington. And what made this title even more convincing was the way she won it. Her serve held up under pressure. Her movement was exceptional. Her aggressive baseline game kept Pegula uncomfortable. Whenever the American threatened to turn the match around, Eala responded with calm court coverage, smart decisions, and perfectly timed aggression. She didn't shrink when the pressure increased. She seemed to embrace it. That composure is exactly why so many people are now looking at Alex Eala not merely as a promising young player but as someone capable of becoming one of the major stars of the WTA Tour. One WTA 500 trophy didn't tell us exactly how far her career will go, and tennis has a way of creating new challenges almost immediately. But one thing is no longer debatable after Washington: Alex Eala has proven she can go through world-class opposition and finish the job when a championship is on the line. She came into the Mubadala DC Open chasing another opportunity. She left with history, 500 ranking points, 252,000, a career-defining trophy, and the attention of the tennis world. At just 21 years old, the Filipino sensation has turned one of the toughest weeks imaginable into the biggest victory of her career. And after everything she just did in Washington, maybe Jessica Pegula said it best before the final. Alex Eala may be the future of the tour, but after this performance, the future suddenly feels a whole lot closer.